out of hospitality, actually. That's where you started, in the hospitality industry. And you joined in July of last year? Okay, all right, well, yeah, take it away.
Thank you, Lisa. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So, hello everyone. I'm Oshi. I'm a software engineer here at BlackRock. And now I'm going to tell you my story, how I ended up in IT, and what I learned during the way. So, a couple of things about me. I come from a small town called Békéscsaba, 200 kilometers far from Budapest. I have always enjoyed learning about natural sciences. My favorite subjects were mathematics and chemistry, and I had good grades. But when it came to choosing a university, I have never even really considered choosing an engineering degree. Why? I don't really know, but I think it's the combination of two things. First, all of my classmates chose popular faculties like commerce, finance, or marketing. And two, I didn't hear of a woman engineer as famous as Bill Gates or Steve Jobs who could really inspire me. So, long story short, I ended up in tourism and hotel management. The courses were not too challenging, so I started chasing another degree at this very same university. And the first time I realized that I wasn't at the right place when I had to work in the industry as an intern. And during my internship, I learned that sales department of a big hotel is full of extroverts, and I'm more like an introvert, and I didn't feel that I belonged there. So, yeah, that's it. Also, while I was working on my thesis, I realized that I really enjoy focusing on something and really understanding it. And my thesis was about calculating the return on green investments in the hotel industry. So I had to submit like 45 pages, then my thesis ended up like 80 pages long. So by the time I got my degree, I knew that I don't really want to work in a hotel. But it wasn't a big deal actually, because it turned out it's almost impossible to get a job in this industry. I sent my CV to a lot of hotels in Budapest, and I get no response. So that's when I know it's a trap, at least for me. So I started to look for something else. As my degree was in economics, I started working as an analyst at an investment bank, and my main task was to enter contracts into the system. At the same time, I got inspired by my boyfriend, who is a software engineer, and he even said that you could be a software engineer. And the main difference between me and him is that he started coding a little bit earlier than me. So I started learning business information systems at the Corvinus University of Budapest. For those who are not familiar with this program, it's half business and half IT. So you can learn about project management, databases, programming, just enough to know which one interests you the most. So learning at this university really opened me a door, because there was an opportunity to join the reporting team. They needed someone who could create reports manually and who could write SQL queries. So I went to my manager and said to her that I was really interested. I was already studying IT, so could you please consider me for this position? So she said yes. So I got transferred and I started working with relational databases, and I started learning SQL. The highlight of my time here was when I automated a tedious process. So there are a lot of business units at this investment bank, and each business unit had to report their metrics to the senior management. Each business unit had their own style and format to create this presentation. And after deadline, these presentations were merged manually. So my solution was a SharePoint site where all of these business units could upload their presentations, and after a certain deadline, I downloaded them, merged them into a single final presentation. So the senior management was impressed, and I was also very happy because I learned VBA to program PowerPoint. I learned about JavaScript and used it in the SharePoint. So that's when it became clear to me, I want to code full time. So there was I, working as a reporting analyst for almost 4 years. I finally got my degree in IT. I could work with VBA, SQL, but it wasn't really an engineering role. And I couldn't just apply for a software engineering position just yet. And what I mean by this, I didn't have hands-on knowledge in any of the programming languages. Due to working and studying at the same time, I couldn't deepen my knowledge. So I had two options to gain experience in coding. Option number one, learn coding by working. After finishing my studies at the Corvinus University, I would have more time, which would mean studying late night hours after work or during the weekends. And if I do it right, I might get a software engineering position in 2 years. So it worked for me perfectly for 2 weeks because there was always someone's birthday, training, a big project, a family event, and you start to lose momentum and you suddenly find yourself doing it all over again. And at the same time, you do have a job, you do make enough money to get by, and you do have a career path in front of you. So why would you even torture yourself when it's clearly not happening, right? So I went with option number 2 and left my job to learn coding. And I spent the next 7 months at home. And I don't want to sound sarcastic. My mentor was my boyfriend. So the first thing I did was to pick a programming language. I chose Java as it is a widely used object-oriented programming language. And I started learning from books. One of my favorite ones is Java Head First. I followed the curriculum of this book, which clearly explains the basics of Java. The next step was to learn how to implement the most important data structures like lists, maps, sets. So I watched several online lectures by Jonathan Shuchak on YouTube on data structures, and I also enjoyed the online lectures by John Purcell, who created this cable programming site. So when you learn from books or you watch online lectures by yourself, it can have a disadvantage. You think you understand something, but you really don't. So it's great that we had short feedback loops with my boyfriend to recap what I learned during the day. So it was very easy to find a gap in my knowledge, and it was a fast way for me to learn coding, because I didn't move forward until I completely understood the chapter. And what I also did differently is that from the beginning, I was writing tests for everything. So at the same time, I learned coding and also testing. And a lot of books about programming say that you should learn the algorithms first, and they do not even emphasize how important testing is. So I was alone at home, and every day I got a task from my boyfriend that I had to solve by the time he got home. So when I was stuck at home alone, I couldn't ask for help. So I wrote tests, and these tests really helped me understand how my code works. And it really gave me confidence that I can improve my code, make any changes whenever I want. Because as a beginner, I think the most important thing is that you know your code and you know how it behaves, right? So I will always remember this mantra: if your code works correctly but you don't have tests, you got lucky. So after understanding the basics, I learned about the frameworks, because in real life you work with frameworks like Spring, Hibernate, JDBC. So I learned about Spring. I learned how I can configure a database, how I can write into a database, how auto-wiring works, and I watched several online lectures by John Purcell on cable programming. So after the frameworks, I learned about a couple of design patterns, like builder pattern, singleton pattern, and also the clean code principles. I also watched several courses by John Purcell. So after having a strong understanding about the backend, I extended my knowledge to the frontend, because I wanted to know what the UI developer does. So I learned about JavaScript, HTML, Angular, and I watched several online lectures on Net Academia, where you can also learn in Hungarian. So after having an understanding about the backend and the frontend, I started to work on a pet project. I was always fond of tracking my income and expenses, so I built my minimum viable product from the backend to the frontend to track my money. So it really gave me a confidence that I can build a product up from the ground up. So after my pet project, I learned Java 8 new features which were new at the time. So after this point, I felt that it was time to test my knowledge, because spending 7 months at home alone, I really wanted to get back to work. So I started to prepare for the interviews by searching online what questions junior Java developer usually gets during interviews, and also I had mock interviews with my boyfriend, which really gave me confidence how I can explain my solution at once during an interview. So then I knew or heard that BlackRock is coming to Budapest, and also heard that the head of Budapest is a woman, so I applied for a position at BlackRock. And after 5 interviews, including several technical ones, I joined the firm last July. Since then, I have been really enjoying my time here. I learned a lot, and I've been to several BlackRock offices, and I met amazing people here. Although passing the interviews doesn't mean that you are great at programming. I have to cope with day-to-day challenges. I'm working with senior developers who have been coding for years, and they can solve a problem in less time than me. So I usually remind myself that in coding, everything is very simple. Everything is built upon each other. So I usually start with understanding the little pieces first, and then build up my knowledge. Also, it has advantages when you come from the business. I know both sides, both the engineering side and both the business side. So whenever we have to talk to the users, I am happy to pick up the phone and explain our product to them, explain our code to them in a way that they would understand it. So a couple of takeaways from my presentation. Make changes in your career path if necessary, like I did when I started learning business information systems at the Corvinus University. It's okay to give yourself time to know what interests you within IT, like I did, because I later realized that I want to code full-time, like 4 years. So the last one, build your confidence up one step at a time, because I think as a beginner, to this day, I'm really concerned that my solution might not be the optimal, or I might not be using the best practices, although I can be sure that my code does what I want it to do. So thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.
And before everyone goes, I wanted to see if anyone had any questions for Orshi, anything related to her or her career path or trajectory. Yes, James.
That was terrific. So just in terms of your time, the 7 months that you had, where you had the luxury of having a boyfriend who was a pregnant, if you didn't have that, what would you recommend would be the best approach?
Well, obviously, when you don't have that help, especially when you don't have a partner who could support you, I think I would first create a strategy, and I would make some money and spare some money, so that when I decide that I want to leave my job to stay at home for months, the most important thing is that you will have money for that period, right? So I would create a strategy and spare some money.
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm big fan of this type of immediate feedback as well. How does it work? Would you talk in BlackRock? Do you guys do code reviews for each other? If yes, how often? What's your corporate culture about mentoring through coding?
Sure. So within BlackRock, code reviews and giving feedback, it is in our culture. So every day, for example, if I struggle with something, I usually ask for help, and my colleagues are my mentors now, and they give feedback at the time. So they really help me, and I think within our culture, everyone receives this help.
Do you do it before accepting PRs and things like that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You mentioned specific websites and courses that you've taken during your learning period. How did you pick from the wide range of online available courses these specific ones?
Yeah, basically I search online, and actually I mentioned Net Academia, which was suggested by my father-in-law, actually, because he's a programmer as well, he's a software engineer as well. But basically I searched online.
Yeah, but the thing is, online we have so much of these videos available and a wide range of university courses that you can take in programming and IT. So what were the characteristics that you were looking for when picking these specific courses?
Yeah, so I was looking for courses that would have like recordings so that I could watch them, because I needed that time. While I watched the recording, I usually coded that task myself. So I was looking after those specific ones.
Maybe that you can stop the video and
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's like the question. Do you have any suggestions on finding the first reference projects before applying for a job?
Can you repeat it, please?
If you have any suggestions on finding the reference project before applying for a job, in your case it was a pet project.
Yeah, for me it was natural that I would build a product like for tracking my money, because I was interested in. So I think the best is if you choose a project that you are interested in. For example, this money tracking.
Do you spend any time with blockchain technology, or is that something
No, not yet. No.
And one question on my end. Have you experienced life as a programmer and as a woman differently than your colleagues? Have you found that you're treated differently, or what's your experience as one of the rare women on the team?
Well, actually, my team is very inclusive, so I am happy to say that I really enjoy being here, because I'm not treated differently. That's because I'm a woman. I'm an equal member of my team.
Great, good to hear. Any last questions before we go? Yes.
Yeah, sorry again. So, you told us about the BBA project that you worked on that really got you into this programming and why you wanted to learn more about coding. So, can you tell us about a project that you did at BlackRock, which was a similar excitement?
Yeah, sure. For example, within BlackRock, I'm in the sales engineering team, and we are building several products. For example, we are building a new mobile application for our sales teams, which is very exciting because I have learned a lot of new things during the development. So yes, we have several projects.
Yes.
What did your friends and family say when you said to them that you wanted to become a software engineer? You did not work for half a year.
Yeah, they were surprised at first that I want to change careers, but they were very supportive.
All right, thank you so much for coming.
Oh,
Thank you.
so sorry, I have one thing. So it was interesting, you said there were no jobs in hospitality. How many classmates did you have in Corvinus who studied in the same field? Because they won't have jobs either.
You mean hotel?
Hotel, and yeah, how many people were in your course, do you remember? 5,
Really.
50, 500, 5,000?
200?
200. So this is what I'm seeing also in the UK, I think everywhere else, is that the educational institutions are pushing out lots of masters and PhDs and whatnot in, in arts, in social sciences, in, I don't know, hotel man, this and that. And there are no jobs because that's not where the industries are going. So what you're telling here is probably,
Very common.
it's thousands and thousands and thousands of young people, maybe millions within Hungary, will be facing the same issue, is that the tertiary education is not going to prepare them for what they need. So I would be very curious later on, maybe the people who interviewed you, if I can talk to them, because this I think will be maybe more and more the situation that yeah, because people, so I'm saying that it will be more and more the case that they will find really talented and very quick learning people, but from non-traditional backgrounds coming into engineering. And yeah, I think that's a discussion we'll need to have in a bigger scale.
Absolutely, and that's pretty much a theme here at BlackRock too. I come from psychology and sociology background, and now I work in legal and compliance.
Exactly.
So it's really, people are switching things up in that respect very much. All right, thank you, Orshi, and thanks everyone for coming. See you at the next debrief.